These areas are broadly referred to as the motor network. So these are areas of the so-called cerebral cortex, which are in the outer portion of the brain. And they send these wires down the spinal cord. There's a little relay in the spinal cord called the IML. If you're interested in the anatomical details, I'll put the link to this paper in the show note captions. In any case, these brain areas that are involved in motor movement send axons, those wires, down to the spinal cord. Then from the spinal cord, they send a relay out via what's called the cholinergic preganglionic neurons. Basically, what ends up happening is that acetylcholine, which is a neuromodulator, is released from these neurons that originate in the spinal cord onto the adrenal medulla. And then the adrenal medulla, the so-called adrenals, same thing, adrenal medulla, adrenals, releases adrenaline. That creates these effects in the body on the heart, the muscles, and other tissues. And then, as described before, that adrenaline also acts on the vagus up to the NST, the locus coeruleus, and we have this elevation in alertness. So this paper and papers that came subsequent to it really explain how it is that the movement of our body, aka exercise, allows us to have this elevation in arousal and alertness. It's a loop. Okay, the adrenals release adrenaline. They do these things by these two parallel pathways I've been talking about. But your decision to engage these motor areas, to move particular areas of your body, is what deploys that adrenaline. And you might be thinking, well, duh. Okay, when I exercise, there's adrenaline release. In order to exercise, I need to move my body. And these brain areas control the movement of my body. But it's not a duh. It's actually very profound because it turns out the specific brain areas that best activate the adrenals are the brain areas that control the muscles closest to the midline, the core musculature, and the brain areas that are involved in generating the sorts of movements that we would call compound movements, at least in the context of resistance training, or that are responsible for moving multiple joints at the same time. So what this means in the practical sense is if you are feeling sluggish, you want energy, or you're simply exercising both for bodily effects and for brain effects, you need the deployment of adrenaline, of epinephrine. You need the deployment of norepinephrine in the brain. And by the way, anytime you have a deployment of norepinephrine in the brain, almost always there's a coordinated action of release of dopamine, which most people have heard of by now. Dopamine is involved in motivation as well as movement, etc. So the simple takeaway here is if you want to get the arousal that comes from exercise in order to use that arousal, to leverage it towards better cognition, brain health, etc. Key thing is to make sure that you're doing exercises that are compound exercises.